Where does Hong Kong stand right now, Steve?
Well, again, renewed street clashes in places like Causeway Bay, one of the most densely populated as well as retail center of Hong Kong. We had pitched battles, at least, as you mentioned, at least 180 confirmed have been arrested by police, mostly for illegal assembly. Of course, they have the social distancing regulations still in place here in Hong Kong in the aftermath, well, not even the aftermath, in the midst of this coronavirus outbreak. At least 4 police officers were said to be injured, multiple members of the public as well. You can see the footage and the videos that are being passed around the community of protesters either attacking innocent bystanders or police coming up to people who are not provoking police officers but being sprayed with pepper spray. You can twist it any way you want based on a 30-second clip, but overall it was another weekend that we had not seen of this kind of violence for a couple of months as we went through the coronavirus outbreak with relative peace as, of course, those social distancing measures were put in. Now, the police did bring out their water cannon trucks. They did fire their tear gas as protesters gathered to oppose the new national security laws proposed late last week at the National People's Congress, China's legislature in Beijing. But protesters say they're going to continue the fight. More protests are scheduled for the rest of this week. There weren't the large numbers. Bloomberg News puts the estimate in the hundreds. Others have put it into the thousands, but nowhere near the numbers we saw in the summer of last year, upwards, again, estimates, again, by the protesters of 1 million or 2 million people. But again, maybe this is something that is gaining momentum, or perhaps some people in society, quite a few people perhaps in society, are having protest fatigue or plenty of fatigue because of the coronavirus outbreak. But Joshua Wong, he's one of the most prominent activists. He says we must stand up and fight and let Beijing know that we will never surrender. Dave?
Steve, you know, one of the biggest questions remains how Washington responds to Beijing's move, right? Do we have any further idea, given that last week, immediately, we were hearing news of these new bills potentially that would be that reaction?
Yeah, that's right. And you heard kind of a cross-section of those views in those sound bites right before this report, saying what can the United States do, and will this Hong Kong be the flashpoint, the new flashpoint, or a resurgent flashpoint in the tense U.S.-China relations. Mike Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, says he is weighing how to respond to the new security laws proposed by Beijing, which he called, by the way, a death knell for Hong Kong's autonomy. Of course, the options include sanctioning Chinese officials, putting new tariffs on Hong Kong goods. Of course, Hong Kong is much of a re-export center of Chinese goods through the lower tariff area of Hong Kong. But they could also ban technology sales to Hong Kong. But keep in mind as well, there's a chorus of new views saying if you revoke the privileged trading status that the United States bestows on Hong Kong, you're going to be really hurting Hong Kong more than perhaps what they would say would be the perpetrators of this, and that is Beijing. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, Wang Yi, he's the foreign minister of China. He tried to assuage all these fears that have come out over the weekend. He spoke yesterday in Beijing. He says it will not affect the high degree of autonomy Hong Kong enjoys, nor will it affect the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong residents, nor will it affect the legitimate rights and interests of foreign investors in Hong Kong. Keep in mind, the Hang Seng Index was down 5.5%, the biggest fall that we've seen, I believe, since July of 2015. He also went on to say, Wang Yi said, everyone should have more confidence in the future of Hong Kong and do not need to worry too much. Well, there are a lot of worries, given what, like the American Chamber of Commerce came out and said, the vaguely defined law is what is concerning a lot of investors. And Financial Secretary Paul Chen, as well, in his regular blog post on Sunday, he tried to allay the fears as well that the moves will not threaten confidence in the financial sector.
Steve, what are the next steps for this? Obviously, we have to watch what happens in the NPC before it actually, and we get to actually see what that law will actually look like. And just give us a rough timetable here.
Well, there'll probably be more protests coming up. We've already heard from a number of people. One protester was quoted in Bloomberg News as saying the unrest could turn even more violent. As a Hong Konger, I must take every step I can. But then in Beijing, it's their move right now, as the National People's Congress will be debating this bill and likely rubbing it through to the next steps of approval by the end of the NPC on May 28th. Then the NPC Standing Committee, which generally convenes every 2 months, would have to have its rubber stamp approval of this law. Then we could likely see the imposition by August at the earliest. And then, it's going to be a tough summer for Hong Kong as we head towards those October Legislative Council elections.